Okay. So just to start, we thought we'd start with talking about what digital iftars are. And this project came about because, as a few people have mentioned, this is our second Ramadan during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know for myself and for other people, there was a lot of conversation about, I can't believe this is our second iftar, second Ramadan during COVID. And what does it mean to sort of enter into the space again with more fatigue and maybe more hesitancy than even we had last year, because now we've had a whole year under lockdown or under the pandemic. And so this is an attempt to make our second Ramadan feel a bit more socially connected through hosting and attending digital iftars. And so we're hoping to provide sort of support and assistance for people who are both wanting to host and attend digital iftars. And this initiative is open to Muslims across Canada, but it has a focus on those who are facing particular challenges to social isolation. And so all of us are feeling some form of social isolation, but some of us are feeling a little bit more than others. And our goals are really to create joy and play and memory. We're in a time where every day there's sort of different rules that govern what it is we can and can't do in our cities and homes and spaces. And this project is really a respite from that, a place to create some joy and play and think about what it is we want to document from our Ramadan and also from what's happening in our communities. So we want to create some joy, we want to document conversations, and we also want to collect some stories from elders in our families and in our communities. So a digital iftar is an iftar that you celebrate remotely and virtually. It is the meal that we have around breaking our fast, and it's an opportunity for us to be together and apart. We are open to whatever platform this happens on. It's your choice in terms of what you're already connected to, what you want to host on, what you want to attend. And really the idea is that just because we have all these restrictive rules that shape how we're moving in space right now, it doesn't mean we have to be alone. And so a general structure of how this might happen is that you'd come online before it's time to break your fast, be in conversation with people around a topic or a theme of interest. You'd break your fast, you'd continue chatting and sharing your iftar with others. And then as a host, if you're hosting, you'd chronicle a memory, or even as a participant. And so this is essentially, it's just a way for us to be together apart in a time that for so much is generally a time of great social connection, and we can't be together in the same way this year. And so for many of us, we've been in a lot of digital spaces this year, some of us not so much, but this project is trying to address particular barriers to connection so that it's open to everyone who possibly wants to participate. One barrier is you might be unaware of online gatherings taking place. So we're hoping to collate and create a repository of online Ramadan gatherings on our website at digitaliftars.ca. You also may be hosting or and know that not everyone who you want to connect with will have meals for iftar time. And so we do have some limited funding available for meals. And when you sign up to be a host, you can indicate that on your application. You may not know how to host an online space. And so today is an opportunity to sort of think a little bit more about facilitation. And if you're unsure what platform to use, we have a toolkit on our site that kind of talks about different platforms and relevant considerations. And so there's the attending, but there's also the documenting iftars in a pandemic. And we're hoping to create an archive of memories and document conversations that we're having in our various online spaces during the pandemic, both through tagging us at Digital Iftars, and we're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and also using a hashtag Digital Iftars. That works less well if you're using stories on Instagram, so we want you to tag us as well. And this could be, you may have hosted an iftar and you want to share what you're thinking about and discussing with family. You might want to share some gems from elders. I know one of my goals this Ramadan is I want to share, chronicle some of my dad's memories of Ramadan in Karachi. And you might just want to take a picture of your virtual iftar and blur out names and faces so that the thing that you're documenting makes sense for the group that you're with. So how does this happen? So some really key things is thinking about purpose first, thinking small, thinking about who to and what you want to share. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these one at a time. So in terms of possible purposes, the first thing that will guide all of your other decisions is thinking about why it is you want to host this iftar. It might be that you want to meet with family across the country and record Ramadan memories. This is something that I want to do. I have family scattered around the country, and so I want to help us connect. It might be that you want to learn more about your parents' Ramadan memories and do an interview that you can digitize afterwards. Maybe you want to think more about what it means to be a Muslim settler on unceded land. That could be a conversation. Or whatever the topic is, thinking about what purpose and what conversation you want to have will guide what it is you want to do. You also want to think about having a small gathering, so maybe 5 to 6 people. And as you're thinking about purpose, you also want to think what kind of an artifact would make sense for this kind of conversation. Is it a summary of what we talked about? Is it just a snapshot of us gathering in to socially connect, and the conversation is not the thing you want to chronicle? So purpose matters. And with that purpose, you then want to think about, well, what kind of an iftar do I want to have? If you are specifically wanting to connect with people who are solo during Ramadan, you might want to create an open invitation, and you would indicate that on your application, on your sign up form, to say, this is an open invitation. Please put this on the website. Anyone can join. I've got 6 spots available. The other thing you might want to do is maybe you just want to do it with your family. And so you're creating a space for your siblings, older members of your family, maybe your grandparents, and that's a closed invitation. And you're sending everyone detailed instructions of how to access Zoom or how to access whatever platform you're doing, Skype, or you're having a conversation about a specific topic. Maybe there's a book you're reading in Ramadan and you want to kind of discuss that with others. And so you might want to have a closed invitation with some open spots so that you have a mix. And so really that purpose is then going to guide all of your other decisions. And so before your iftar, you are already doing a great step by being here today, but to keep in mind kind of some of what we're talking about today, as well as some additional details, we have a toolkit on our website that's available in different languages. We also have a form where you can sign up for iftar, where it's fairly short. We just want to know a little bit more about what you're doing. And on the form, if you're looking for additional funds to support your iftar, there is an opportunity to indicate that on the form. And so now we're going to talk about organizing the iftar, and I'm going to pass it on to Nabeel to do that.
Thank you. Can you just confirm that you're seeing my screen? Yes? Okay, great. So there's 4 kind of things that we want you to think about as you're thinking about the iftar. And I just wanted to note as well is that we have, this is how the toolkit is organized as well. It's, hopefully linear before, during, and after. So, so this is the kind of the organizing the iftar section. The first is, once you've thought about your purpose, what is the space that you're creating there? How do you need to prepare your guests, right? So are you sharing anything in advance if you need? Is there a photo, a prompt, a question that you want to share? So think about, how you want to like invite people to this, and what's going to like incentivize them and, encourage them to say, yes, I'm going to take out time and, participate in this week. The next is thinking about the platform that you're using, and this is where concerns about accessibility and inclusion and equity come into play. Also, think about what platform do your guests already use. There are many platforms out there. I and we as a whole don't really endorse any single platform, but think about the one that's going to be most convenient for your guests, and how you want to actually proceed with that. And as you can see, there are different formats. Think about food, and food is often a big part of our kind of consciousness during Ramadan. It's certainly something I think about, but we don't want it to become the focus, right? Because and that's, I think, in keeping with the spiritual tradition of Islam as well. With Ramadan, it's not just about not eating. It's meant to be a spiritual retreat. So think about something that's easy. Think about how you want to actually prepare it. Do you want to make it, or do you want to get takeout? And again, if you have applied for funding, or if you're working with a group that is marginalized, then we can share some funds to get them meals delivered as well. Think about foods that match your theme. If you're talking about, for example, history of Mughal architecture, think about Mughal food. Not that anyone would want to do an iftar about mobile architecture, but you could. Um, and Communicating, just a day or two in advance, send a reminder to your guests, let them know how to join, let them know if there are any requirements or if they need to prepare in advance. Ideally, preparation is limited. Consider sharing any information. How many guests are you expecting? What is the theme? What are the guidelines? So, for example, if you're talking about mobile architecture, you do not talk about brutalist architecture in the modern European century. That's a very niche joke. Then um, Digital inclusion and safety. I just wanted to share some considerations. Think about, again, in terms of accessibility, what tool is easy for guests to use? Do they need high-speed internet access, or can people join over the phone? Think about accessibility in terms of different abilities as well. So, for example, people who have visual barriers, who might be blind, can they actually access this iftar over the phone? Um, does anyone need a tutorial? And so this is especially relevant if you're, for example, trying to engage seniors in your family, and maybe they don't know how to use Zoom or they don't know how to use Clubhouse. Do you need to help them understand how to use Clubhouse and how it functions? Um, think about creating an online safe space. Are there any rules? What is the order of how people speak? Are there things that you don't want people to actually discuss? Um, think about who has access to the space. And I know that in the early stages of the pandemic, we heard about Zoom bombing, right? You would have people who would come in and take over the chat. This is why, there are features that now prevent people from just sharing their screens. Um, and you can think about a waiting room feature and moderate entry. So there are a few things that people should take into consideration as they're thinking about digital inclusion. I'm going to now pass it back to um, Aslam and Shagufta, and they will speak about Iftar.
Thank you so much, Nabeel. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the fun part, iftar time, which we're all looking forward to. And we suggest that you start by hosting yourself. So this is the idea that like before you host other people, you need to make sure that you're in a good space. So as this like cat and little girl telling us, take a deep breath. It's a good idea to revisit your intentions. Why are you inviting people to this iftar? Give yourself ample time before you start hosting on that day so that you have the ability to, create some spaciousness, be able to be grounded yourself. And make sure that you've got everything that you need to be ready in order to present that evening. So are you in a comfortable spot? Do you have good lighting? Bear in mind that the sun is going to set during the course of your iftar. So if you're relying on natural light, that might be an issue. You need to have some additional lighting for after you break your fast, having some food, some snacks, some water around you so that you can be at your computer, be hosting, and also be meeting your body's needs. Be there a few minutes early, and be prepared for technical glitches and lost links. This is just part of what happens when we're trying to host online. So rather than freak out when it happens, just recognize that it's part of the experience and be patient with it. The next piece is how do we host others? So as people come in, probably the most important thing is like, what do they experience? What's the sort of setting that you create for them? Do they see something? Do they hear something when they enter? And this is an invitation to really take advantage of the full spectrum that online gatherings have to offer us, right? We can share music, we can share, different games, icebreakers, all sorts of things that help people feel welcome in the space. Also, take the time in the beginning to make need tutorials when they start, and then establishing some norms around the tech options. Are you asking people to mute their mics when they join so that there isn't a lot of background noise? Or do you want them to keep their mics on the whole time so that if there's jokes, you hear some feedback and some laughter instead of just hearing the silence? It's also a good idea if people don't know each other to introduce themselves when they start. And as we showed, there's different ways that we can introduce ourselves. People can use the chat box. If you want to create a shared Google slide deck, people can type in things over there. And they don't have to be just one thing. You can do something fun. You can ask people to do a movement, to say a single word, or do whatever feels good for them and what suits the context of your gathering. Next, we just want to make sure that everybody feels included. So the thing that I've experienced the most, especially in a country like Canada, where Muslims are coming from all over the place, we've got our different customs, practices, and traditions around iftar time. So some people like to have some silence before they break their fast. Other people will break their fast with something small and then spend some time in prayer and then come back for a discussion. So you can't assume that everybody's going to have the same practices. So it's a good idea to just share what your plan is for the evening. Sometimes we call it like just unfold the evening. So first we're going to do this. We'll take a break at this time. Then we'll do this over here, just that everybody's on the same page, and share and ask if anybody has any other needs or preferences. Do they want something different? And then you can be flexible around that so that everybody's needs around their iftar can be met. Some other ways of making people feel included is to ask the right sized questions. So, if people know each other very well, then you can ask something about like, what's been the most intimate experience of your Ramadan so far? And people might be able to share something quite deep. But if people are just meeting each other for the first time, like we did today, we can just start with a simple question, like what's one word to describe your Ramadan so far? And sometimes we can scale these questions. So we start off with very light, easy questions, and then we build up so that we can deepen the conversation as we go. Also recognize that people have different communication preferences, and this is an advantage of hosting online. So some people like to talk, other people would prefer typing, some people like to use the reaction feature that Zoom has, so you can share little like thumbs up and claps and smileys and heart emojis and things like that. So try know your audience and know what they want and how they prefer to react, and create lots of different ways that they can do that. Thank you for the little heart emojis, Zahra. And lastly, I said earlier, like take advantage of the tech because we are online. That doesn't mean it needs to be a restrictive thing. For example, I've got an ongoing thing with my cousins in South Africa where we meet every other week and we just play some games online. And that's something that we wouldn't have been able to do so far. So if you want to have a look at like Jackbox games, you can play Pictionary using Zoom's whiteboard feature. There's lots and lots of platforms out there and lots of different ways of connecting. Okay, and then the last thing, as we mentioned, is after your iftar, with the consent from your guests, we'd love if you could share something using the hashtag digital iftars and to tag digital iftars. As Shagufta said, we are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And this will be part of our digital archive. So we're hoping that when people look back at this period of time, we'll be able to see like what were the conversations that were happening in the Muslim communities in Canada at this particular point in time. And as we said, like documenting stories from our elders, like this is something that, would be invaluable in the future. So the more personal stories we can get and build into our collective memory, I think the better off we'll all be. We'll be sending you an email if you're a host of an iftar, just afterwards asking for some feedback and reminding you to share something if you can. And we also encourage you to encourage others to sign up as hosts, because that will also help to spread the project a bit further. Yeah, just the screenshot on the right is to show you that on the digitaliftars.ca website, we have an archive section that we'll be adding to as the month goes on. I think that's it in terms of our presentation. So we want to make space for some questions right now. And I will stop my screen share. And yeah, I think we might stop recording as well. So that does